This is where the crypto space is the wild, wild west at this point. There was a ton of people involved in this.
The heat's beginning to get turned up. Is that right?
The documentary doesn't show this. The documentary doesn't show this.
It doesn't at all.
But they don't care about morality. I was like, pit in my stomach, my business partner is dead.
You know, the big question is, what's next?
Behind the scenes, I had figured out a way.
Ray Trapani, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Good. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Hey, listen, it must be wild for you right now. Your show, your film, which I just watched a couple of days ago, literally, came out in the UK a few days ago. It's now, well, it was number one in Netflix in the UK. It's certainly still sort of hanging around the sort of position 2 or 3 right now. So your name is all over the place, getting various different kind of reviews and sort of mixed views about the kind of whole journey you've been on. So I just want to say, first up, really grateful that you've spent the time to come and speak to a British audience. So great to have you here. Now,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. Now, I want to go through, obviously, the story and really sort of unpack all the lessons you've learned, the journey you've been on. But I think it's really important, right, to go back to the beginning. Tell me about your background, Ray. I mean, where are you from? What was your upbringing like? What was the family that you were brought up like?
I'm from Long Island, New York, in the United States, which you guys are from the UK, so you might not be, but most people are familiar with New York City.
Sure.
So as far as New York City, it's basically an island off of New York, which is about 45 minutes from the city. And, you know, it's like you get the best of both worlds, right? You're on the beach during the summer, and then you also can drive into the city 45 minutes an hour. I mean, if there's New York traffic, it's 2.5 hours, but that's just how New York is. As far as upbringing, family-wise, I grew up in a single family house with just my mom.
Right.
And my dad had left before I was born. And my mom was a nurse, and she worked 12-hour shifts in the ICU pretty much 4 to 5 days a week because she was always trying to get overtime, make sure the bills were paid. So she was always just, I always saw my mom as a struggling single mom. And I also have 2 older brothers that are my full brothers.
Right.
And then once I hit, and then my grandparents also lived up the block from us. And my grandfather was kind of, in my eyes, I always looked at him, as I speak about in the documentary, as in the mafia, right? Just to blatantly say it. He started a union in New York City. He was always involved in the elevator unions. And then by the time like I was around, he had a consulting company, which a consulting company, who the hell knows what a consulting company even does these days, right?
It covers a lot, doesn't it? Consulting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
all right.
and
So that's what he was doing. Okay. He was in business, right? Though, in whatever way you describe it, he was somehow in business, entrepreneurial himself, your grandfather, right?
Yeah. And that was my father essentially, right? Like, cause my dad wasn't around. That's who I looked up to. And, I never saw him do anything illegal in my life. Right. But he always, you know, jewelry, always had a lot of cash, and it was always had that entrepreneurial like outlook on everything. Right. Like he was always pushing me to, you know, think about opening a business when I got older. He wasn't really always focused on school because it just wasn't his path either.
Right. Okay. So he was obviously a big influence on you, and that does come across in the documentary as well. It does. So what did you do? Did you graduate high school?
No, I didn't graduate high school. And there's a part there where I think is important to bring up because it led me into being who I became as a criminal. And it was, my mom got remarried, and I had stepbrothers. And from about 8 to 12, which is it's a sore subject, I was molested from 8 to 12 by a stepbrother, right? So it gave me a lot of resentment towards the world, and it made me kind of always have this attitude where I'm going to get the world back. So that comboed with like thinking my grandfather was also a criminal, I was basically like, this is going to be my path. I'm going to get the world back. Plus I'm going to make as much money as possible to be very self-serving in that sense.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, that I'm no psychologist, but I do know that age, that kind of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, they're really formative years, aren't you? You're really sort of shaping yourself. You're just growing up. You're not a baby anymore, and you sort of your thoughts and ideas, and as you say, your attitude in the world is really getting formed strongly there. So, again, as you say in the film, quite early on that you very intentionally decided to go down a criminal path. You made that decision. You're, yeah, I was doing a bit of research on this before. You've got a LinkedIn profile. I don't know if you looked at it very recently, but it's, it's a bit dated, to be fair, but it does say that the first job you were doing was in construction. You're talking about being in construction. What was that? You're working as a foreman. Was that like a legit job?
Yeah, so that's a bit of a fast forward a little bit, right? We can always go back to some other stuff I did before this, but that was around 17, 18, probably about 18 years old. I had been struggling with addiction, and then I got sober for a little bit, and my grandfather just got me a full book in construction in New York. You basically get a union card, and you usually have to do an apprenticeship, but I got to skip that apprenticeship and go right into making about $100,000 a year at 19ish or 18. But it's super hard work.
Right.
And it's backbreaking work.
What did we skip over then? What were then I guess the early teenage years and beyond? Any moments you want to just talk about those days?
There's one story that I think that's kind of fun to tell as far as what I think first led me into wanting to be an entrepreneur. It was when I worked at the beach. I was around 14, maybe 30, about 14 at this age. And for the summer, everybody in my town worked at the beach as a chair boy. They would bring down the chairs and get the tips. It was a nice community, and that's what everybody did. So I decided to, like everybody kind of in that neighborhood also smoked a lot of pot, kind of that whole area. So I decided to start selling weed. And then I also basically paid this kid to take down all the chairs. And I would basically collect my paycheck while I was able to I would just give him free weed to take down all the chairs and take the tips. And I would get my paycheck. And I would also be able to sell weed all day and sit on my ass and just kind of enjoy it. But it made me feel like almost like a business owner, right? Like I had an employee that was taking down all the chairs, and I was, controlling the whole neighborhood for pot. And just like in a weird sense, that was my first experience. And in 2.5 months that the summer was going into my high school year, my first year of high school, I made about 15 grand or 10 to 15 grand. And I remember having it all in cash, which at 13, 14 is a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And so obviously you enjoyed that experience. That was your kind of early stage entrepreneurial. You created a role for yourself, created a job for yourself, and made some good money. So I guess you're getting a taste for this. And obviously the other things going on in your background is clearly beginning to shape, kind of who you are and who you are growing up. So we go through, and you leave school then, and we're back to the construction work. How long were you doing that for? That's a legit job. As you say, real work, hard work, good money, but hard work. And how long did you do that role for?
I did that for probably maybe 1.5 or 2 years. And it just made me realize that I was never going to stick doing construction. That was like what it made me realize. I was never going to be someone that was able to do hard labor my entire life.
Yeah, interesting. Again, you had the experience as a teenage kid, making some good money. Just kind of, as you put it, sitting in your ass and having other people do it and getting good money. And then there's good money in construction, but it really is proper work, isn't it? It's hard work, backbreaking, as you say. So you've recognized of the two experiences you've had, I'm sure you had other experiences as well, but the two main ones that you've just shared with us, there was definitely one you preferred above the other. So yes, sure. What's next in this story? Because the next bit that comes through in the movie is you head down to Miami. Is that kind of the next step?
Yeah, so there was just a point where I was basically just fed up with construction, and I went down to visit my friend Bert, who was already living down there, and his roommate had just got in trouble for something and had moved out. And I went down to visit, and I had a girlfriend at the time back in New York. And when I went down to visit, he was like, "Oh, my roommate just moved out. You should move down here." And I already, as soon as he said it, I was like, "I'm moving down here." I flew back that day, packed up my car, and I drove down there with everything, my TV in my back seat. It's about a 24-hour drive straight through. I didn't make one stop. I probably stopped to pee, but I just drove, no sleep, straight there.
Yeah. You just wanted to be in Miami, right?
Yeah, we also had conversations. He had businesses up until that point. with the kid, Sam, that was my co-defendant.
Yeah.
So he had car businesses back in New York. And so when he was talking to me about opening a car business, that's why I was like, all right, let's make this happen. I'm moving down here. So I drove right down there.
Amazing. And then that leads you into the Miami Exotics? Is that sort of the next step? Tell us about that.
So that's my first legitimate business that I had started.
Right.
So at that time, I reached out. Like the biggest thing in early business that I think a lot of people struggle with is finding, the ability to get access to capital and credit, through credit. And that was something that like I never really had the balls to like ask for help up until that point, and I didn't have the confidence in myself. But I was like, let me just ask, and I got the nerve to just ask some family members. I had some capital saved at this point. From besides the construction, I was doing some other things in the midst there, but so I had some capital saved, and I asked everybody if I can, put car loans in their name, like my father-in-law. I mean, not my father-in-law. It was my he's not really my stepfather. It's like my mom's boyfriend, but they've been together since they were little kids, and they got back together. And then I asked my grandfather to help me. He took a home equity line of credit.
Right.
And I got access to a lot of capital. And from there, I started buying cars. And we had built out a whole business plan that I presented to everybody. That was actually a good step that I learned, is that Bert taught me how to draw up a business plan. And we drew up probably a 20-page business plan on how much each car could make, how much the insurance would cost, every single aspect of the car rental business, right? Like if this happens, how can we, how much would it cost to fix the tires on a Lamborghini or on an Aston Martin? Those are like the major cost in car rentals, is because a lot of people ding up your tires.
Yeah.
It's like the main focus of when people rent cars. And,
but you thought it all through. You've done your homework, done your sums, presented it. And so you borrowed money from your family, right? That really got you going. You needed access to capital. Presumably a bank wasn't going to lend you. You were too young and inexperienced. So you were able to get money from family. So they were doing like proper business loans effectively to you, expecting you to pay them back and give them a return of the money once you made a profit, right?
Correct. And they weren't looking for profit. They weren't looking for profit themselves. It was just
right. They were just trying to help you out. Yeah. Makes sense. And so what were you buying? You mentioned there's all these like supercars,
all
Lambos,
supercars.
Yeah, and
Lambos,
again, that's
Ferraris, Aston Martin, Bentley.
And that's the scene in Miami, right? Especially there's, people are going down there on vacation and stuff, and they're renting out these supercars, driving around on South Beach and everything else. And I guess happy to splash the money, pay good money to rent cars.
Yeah.
That was the model, right?
People go to Miami to, like, people that don't have a lot of money. They go to Miami planning on spending all the money in their bank account. That city pulls everybody's last money out. Everybody's faking it till they make it out there.
Yeah.
Everybody from all of America goes there. And, whether they're from the worst neighborhood or the best neighborhood, they're just spending the maximum amount of money they could. So everybody wants a car.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say, not only just from America, from Europe as well. There's certainly quite a number of UK people go across there as well. I know for sure. So yeah, it's a really showy place. It's a flashy place, and it's pretty cool to be driving a Lambo or an Aston Martin or something along the beachfront. Exactly. So you were the guys to provide the cars, and presumably it was expensive to rent the cars for the people. And were you doing well? Was it making money? Were you profitable?
Yes, we were profitable probably after the 3 or 4 month period. 3 or 4 months in, we were probably at a point where making about 50 to 60,000 a month profit, but our spending habits as the owners were awful.
Right. Okay. That's the classic money in versus money out. You were making, so that's great money. That's good profit. 50,000 a month is good profit. But what, you're spending 60,000 a month or something? You were spending too much.
Sometimes more than that. That's what was so bizarre the whole time. And it just was like, no matter every single, like in Miami, you can spend 5,000 if you go out one night, or 10. You can even spend 10,000 easily. That's not even like that much to spend if you go to a club, and it's it's so much money. Like now, I would never. I have kids. I could buy my I can pay my mortgage.
Yeah, exactly. What age were you at this point? You in your 20s,
I'm in
early 20s?
Early 20s.
Right. I mean, I'm just thinking, an early 20-year-old guy from New York living in Miami with his sort of Lamborghini car rental business is probably quite easy to spend a lot of money. And you obviously proved that point. You were spending well.
And then it gets addicting to spend, essentially, right? Like the women that come along with it.
Yeah.
The whole lifestyle, everybody propping you up. You're hanging out with celebrities at this point, and they have not endless money, but you're almost like trying to show off to the celebrities to be in circles and get your brand out there and build your brand in this thought process where, like, sooner or later the brand will be too big to even spend too much money.
Yeah, right. And you're probably convincing yourself this is part of your brand building, your business building, just being out in the right clubs, the right bars, speaking to the right people, because they're going to rent more cars from you in the future. So you're kind of justifying it's a business expense, you being out there and speaking to the right people, right? So right, there we are. I mean, it sounds great in many ways, but whatever, it's a profitable business. You're doing well. It's a legit business. It's obviously successful. So obviously, the $1 million question or the $32 million question or whatever. The question is, when did the concept of crypto enter your life?
So to get into crypto, when things started going really bad in Miami Exotics, what happened was Sam had been stealing checks from Bert and writing them out in Bert's name, cashing them. And I didn't know who it was. My two business partners were both cashing large checks, and they were blaming each other. And I was also on substances at this point, so my mind wasn't clear, and I was gambling, and I was spending too much money myself. Right? I wasn't in the right either, or in the right mind. And it led to me to a point. And then Sam had been investing in crypto. One of my co-defendants, he had been investing in crypto, and he basically was just like kind of buying and selling on Coinbase. If you know what Coinbase is, which is
sure,
popular.
Yeah.
And,
it's a trading platform. Yeah,
it's a trading platform, and they have like a separate trading platform. At the time, was called GDAX, which you can use, which you can day trade essentially. And that's when he was like showing me about it, and I was like, oh, this is like, what is this ridiculous internet money thing, right? Like, as everybody thinks when they first hear about crypto. It's a little different now because it's so popularized, but back then it was still sounded like the most ridiculous thing. And from there, that's when we all had gotten that fight, and I decided, I was like, I'm going to keep Sam around and get rid of Bert. When now today, I believe that it was actually Sam that stole the money, and Bert was actually telling the truth.
Right.
But I had like some sort of blind faith in Sam because he's a smart kid as well. I've seen him put a lot of ideas, good ideas out there, right? And from there, one day there was a flash crash in crypto, which is like basically out of nowhere, Ethereum went from a few $100s down to 1 cent, and then it just shoots right back up. He had lost 50 grand, and he was trying to basically find a class action suit against Coinbase on Reddit.
Right.
And through that, he found out about ICOs, and it was just all these random companies all over the world raising tens of millions of dollars, and pretty much just young kids. None of them really had experience. We were like, oh, how can we get involved in this?
Yeah, just to be clear, an ICO is initial coin offering, right? It's like an IPO on the sort of proper stock market, but it's where people get together and they kind of create something out of nothing. They create a coin, and then you have an initial offering, which so people, members of the public then can go and buy it. So it's I guess they're selling a story, and there was hundreds or thousands of these things going on at the time, and you just sort of thought, okay, maybe there's an opportunity for us. Is that how it went?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how it went. And then right away, we were just trying to brainstorm what could we do that would be better than everybody else's, right? And we were like, always just let's do everything, right? Like let's like make this a central hub where everybody can get what they want out of crypto. But the card that's like the idea that stuck out the most to us was a company in Singapore called 10x. There's also another company called Monaco at the time, which was doing the same thing as well in another country. And they were basically creating a crypto debit card, which you were going to be able to spend your cryptocurrency at the store like everybody wants to do. That was the biggest. It's still not even mastered, right? Because not everybody's doing it.
That's right.
But then there was no one even thinking about, like, this was like, like some people were even arguing that why do we want to involve Visa and MasterCard or any of these big banks into cryptocurrency? It's supposed to be this digital money, screw those guys.
Yeah, it's supposed to be decentralized, nothing to do with the kind of mainstream legitimate financial world. So, but you're right. People still had a problem. You might own these coins, but how do you spend them? How do you actually buy stuff? So, I mean, just to be clear, and for anyone who hasn't watched the film yet, this is the kind of this is where it all sort of starts. It starts to get really interesting. So, you guys created a business called what? Centra Tech. Centra Tech, right? And so, just explain exactly what that is. I think we started to talk about it. You were creating a debit card. Is that how it worked?
Yes. So it was going to be a debit card that you were able to spend your cryptocurrencies in real time, right? So you'd be able to transfer it into a central wallet, and you'd be able to use that central wallet paired along with your debit card and go to any store you wanted to and spend your cryptocurrency.
Right. However, you couldn't, right? So what was again, this, you talk about this in the movie as well. So you decided to, I mean, it's a good idea in principle. There's no doubt about it. You put to the side, and we'll come back to in a moment, the whole idea around crypto itself. But as a concept, if somebody's into it and they own it and they're buying it, it seems like an attractive proposition to say, well, I've just got this card in my wallet and I can go and buy just normal, whatever, groceries or spend my money in a regular way. However, it didn't work, right? So you knew from the beginning that it didn't work, but we've got what was this? You thought we'll create a story around it and we'll promote it and we'll get people to invest in it. Is that the idea?
So where the fraud that we ended up doing starts is that we're like, all right, who's going to be our CEO, right? Because us two, we have no experience in this field. We have no experience in banking. There needs to be someone that's presentable to the world. And that's where we came up with a guy. We literally searched on the internet, old white guy.
I know. Just Google search for a Google image, old white guy. Yeah.
Old white guy.
I don't know.
And then we took a picture and we found one we liked and we created a LinkedIn. His name is Michael Edwards. And we created his whole, banking background, right? So now
Did you just make up that name? Did Michael Edwards, you just made up the name. You just thought it sounded like a sort of name he should have, like as a CEO of a banking type of finance company. Okay.
There's only so many names you can go with. You can go with Bill. You can go with Michael.
Yeah.
There's
kind of
a few
they're believable. Yeah. So Michael Edwards became your CEO. So you got an image, and so he's found himself on your website as your CEO, right?
Correct. He's
on our
website.
So this is where you begin to get really serious about it. We're going to create like a mythical business, but we've got to create all the kind of to anyone looking in, got to create the infrastructure. And we've got to make it look like it's a legitimate business. Because right now, you two guys, presumably no one's going to invest because you don't have the background or the experience. And the other interesting thing here is it's what you can create nowadays digitally. You can create anything digitally. You didn't need to have a big, a nice office in this sort of main street in Miami or anything. It's all a digital experience. So anyone is beginning to look into this. So I guess to check you out and so you got your website, you got Michael Edwards there, picture of him, you guys.
Yeah. So the website, sorry to cut you off. So the website is basically 10x's website, and we just copy and pasted it and changed out the word 10x and changed the color scheme, right? So it's literally their website. And then now we put the fake CEOs on there. And then from there, the one thing that the other two companies didn't have yet was any actual partnership with a bank, which sooner or later all of these companies were going to need it to be actually able to do transactions at any real store, because the stores pick who they, or the payment processors pick who they deal with, right? Visa, MasterCard, American Express. So that was where we were like, all right, so we need to say that we have Visa and MasterCard, right? That will just put us 10 steps ahead of any company that's in this space.
Yeah. Yeah. At that stage, did 10X have any of these relationships with banks or no? So, but they were sort of trying to create this model that you were replicating. And then you just said that you had these relationships, despite the fact that you just didn't. But you put their logo and put Visa or MasterCard logo on your website, tell everyone you've got it. But my initial thought is, well, how's that going to work? Because the first time someone tries it, it doesn't work. What was the thinking behind it?
So that's the crazy crypto space, right? Is that there was no one, we weren't able to print cards yet. We weren't even close to that stage. It was just the fact that we were able to tell people that we had the partnership with Visa and MasterCard, that we were going to be able to provide once we do provide the cards, but we were still in beta testing. So all the investments come in before you're providing anybody cards. It's just the pipe dream that sooner or later you're going to be able to use these crypto debit cards down the line.
Right.
So that's how it works. It's not like you're just, as soon as someone invests, we weren't telling people when they invest, they're going to come get their card's going to be on the way.
Right. You're just saying that we're building this right now. Yeah. Just put your now. So what do you, just to be clear, I'm not completely clear about this. Do you create your own coin, token, whatever you call it? You create your own version of it, and that's what they buy. That's what investors buy. Is that how it works?
Yes. So on the Ethereum blockchain, which is Bitcoin, Ethereum's number 2, and that's what everything's built off of. Even this new thing that everybody's talking about, the NFTs, that's what everything's built off. It's like basically a platform. It's almost like its own platform where you can build things off of the coin. Bitcoin, you can't really do that with. And so, what you do is you create a smart contract, is what it's called, and you can create your own token that runs on the Ethereum blockchain. So when you transfer tokens on that blockchain, it uses gas is in Ethereum. So it basically helps the Ethereum blockchain grow because the gas is what runs and powers the network. But so once you create the smart contract, which we just had some guys on Upwork, we just went on Upwork, pretty much everything.
And I find that so funny as well, because even when you start talking about this, and look, I'm no expert in this stuff. I know a little bit around the edges, but I'm no expert. But you start speaking about this stuff, it gets quite complex quite quickly. Now, with all respect to you and your background, you were no kind of computer engineer, scientist, and this all stuff. So it sounds a bit complicated. So you just presume you're saying, well, I don't really understand it to the degree I need to build these things. So you just go online and find somebody who can. Is that how it works? You literally go to Upwork. Yeah.
Yeah. Upwork is a fantastic, it still is very good for beginning entrepreneurship, right? If people want to start a business, they can get a guy in a different country that will do it for pennies on the dollar compared to what they'll do in major countries.
Is this where you found these guys in Macedonia? I think it was. Correct. Is that you found them on Upwork? Okay. So I was wondering how this all came about. So they're doing this work for you, creating whatever needs to be created on the Ethereum blockchain to sort of create this product or service. Yeah.
Yeah. So they make the website. They do all the changes that we want, right? Once you put out the website, and then you create the coin. And once they basically write out the smart contract, which is, it's pretty simple to do on the Ethereum blockchain, but you need the developing background to do. And you print as many tokens as you choose to. You can make 1 billion tokens. We made 100 million tokens, and then you basically pick your price, right, of how much you're going to sell it for. So you're going based off Ethereum value. At that time, Ethereum was $200 a token. We were like, all right, so for every one Ethereum that you transfer to us, we'll give you 200 Centra tokens. So it was basically $1 a token at the very start. So we basically said we just printed $100 million, right? Like in theory, you just can print $100 million. But of course, it doesn't hold that value if people don't buy them.
Right. So this is the whole point. I mean, this is for outsiders. This just sounds crazy. It's just like making money, just creating money out of thin air and just deciding what it's worth. So then what? So then you've got this. This is the whole point. I guess it's like a lot of things in many sort of traditional markets. It's a buy and sell. If there's more buyers than there are things for sale, then the price goes up and vice versa. So how do you find people willing to invest their sort of real life money and buy these tokens?
So we just, for the first month and a half, we just went into, there's all these different chat rooms that are in crypto spaces, there's a million every day today that are talking about different projects and trying to pump up coins and whatnot. And we just went into every one and just pitched what we were doing, sent our website, our white paper is what they call it, where you draw up, your whole business model and your plan. And through that, the money at first was very slow. It wasn't fast. It wasn't right away. It wasn't until this one guy, Cliff High, who's like a crypto guru type of guy, and he basically overlapped through his web bot type of thing that he uses, and it overlapped us with a bank. And it basically said that Centra was partnered with a bank, and he put out a press release without doing his own due diligence through his bot, and it basically led to a few $1 million coming into our company. So
that was just pure luck. That was a mistake on his part, right?
Yeah. I mean, at that point, we probably still would have made millions of dollars. We were at a few 100,000 maybe. But that jump was what threw us right into like overdrive of like being able to spend money to market it and really push it to the limits, right? And any business requires some luck.
For sure. Yeah, it does. So you had that luck, as you say. You would have probably done okay anyway, but this was a real kickstart for you. And then it became like a positive cycle. Then you got some money, and as you say, so you start marketing it, and then spending real money on promoting this and getting it wider known. Is that right? This is a kind of word of mouth thing, isn't it? It just goes and first and yeah, you're right. All these kind of online chat rooms and things, and people people would sort of begin to learn about it. I mean, I want to talk about it in a minute or two, but it's just because no one's really got a price on it. Everyone's got to decide what the value is, and if everyone's jumping on that ship and wanting to buy stuff, then no one wants to miss out on it. Which we're back to this kind of fear of missing out type thing, which I think really pervades that whole community. But
it does.
So just tell me more about sort of how that evolved. This just became then kind of full time. You really start taking off. You get more and more people buying into this currency, this token. And in the meantime, is that right? You're still telling them, listen, we're working on the card, it's coming. We're just in beta testing and all that sort of thing. You're just continuing to tell the story, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it wasn't expected that we were going to be beta testing takes years at times, right? Like, there's levels to it. And, so it wasn't expected that people were just going to get cards, but that we would put out basically a timeline of, in a year or at this time, we're going to be able to get people cards. And throughout the time of having the company, we pushed that back a few times. And then once it got to a point where too many people asked questions, we built kind of like this small team of people in our community that were already in our chat rooms to basically be in on the fraud. And we sent them these prepaid cards that we had, we just got a bunch of prepaid cards, and we sent them to a company in California that made them into metal Centra cards that looked like what we were telling people we were going to be able to produce. And then they would also tell everybody else in the chat room they got their card. They were doing unboxing videos, these nice metal cards like a American Express Black card. So those people were
they're all in on it,
participants, right? But we would give them free Centra tokens, right? So this is where the crypto space is the wild, wild west at this point. There's so many people that they don't care about morality. I know a lot of people. I respect people that tell me that my morality was terrible. This is the whole debate today, with a lot of people on the internet with me. And at that point, I didn't have good morals, right, and behavior. But there was a ton of people involved in this crypto space that were willing to participate in fraud to be able to make more money for themselves because there was no regulation.
Yeah, and it's there's so many just twists and turns in the movie. I mean, one thing that you got to stop and laugh at a bit is at some point, I can't remember exactly what it is, but you need to hire a lawyer. So was it you or your colleague is out and just kind of on Google, as you would do, look up a Wall Street law firm to represent you. And it turns out that you, who were, a bunch of scammers, got scammed. Is that right? Is that again exactly as it's portrayed in the movie? Is that what happened? Tell us a bit about that.
It's a good story, and I think it's great for Netflix. But it is overhyped. It is overhyped, and it's somewhat of a narrative for Netflix. That was actually in early stages when we had just made like a few million. There was a coin that had got shut down by the SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Committee.
Yeah.
And we had, heard about it. So we were like, oh, we need to find out if we're a security as well. And we reached out on Upwork. We found a lawyer. We weren't trying to find the best lawyer. We were just trying to find a lawyer that would just give us an answer. And we found a guy, paid him a few $1,000s. He didn't make a ton of money off of us, right? We gave him a few $1,000s, and then he gave us a ruling telling us that our token would be considered a utility token if we can create our own blockchain and make sure that something along the lines of that the gas would burn in Centra, like in Centra tokens. That like when people use the debit cards, and it would just be a utility token. If it's a utility token, it's not a security. And down the line to finish that aspect of why Netflix, when Sam had started dealing with the SEC, he had brought up that this conversation happened, and then the SEC did an investigation into that guy, and then that guy ended up getting arrested, and we were the reason he ended up getting arrested. So it wasn't that we used him for the SEC.
Right. Okay. But it was part of that story. And he was a college kid, right? He wasn't a lawyer at all. Is that right?
Yeah, he wasn't a lawyer at all. He was just a regular college kid that was scamming like DC politicians and everything.
It's incredible. Again, more of the Wild West, as you call it. There's just, you don't know who to trust. But I just want to explore this a bit more. I kind of alluded to it a moment ago. This whole idea that one thing leads to another. And listen, that happens across so many aspects of life. It's not just crypto. There's been so many instances in the past and all sorts of financial issues and non-financial as well. But this thing, which is nowadays called FOMO, fear of missing out, that's got to be one of the biggest drivers. You see things around you. You see, well, he's making a lot of money. He's bought a coin or a token. That's gone to the moon, as the phrase that they all use is. How much of a part does FOMO play in the crypto world, do you think?
It's definitely one of the biggest driving forces. Once some people, and there's a huge contribution that we forced FOMO onto people in all these chat rooms, is because what people, they didn't even cover it in the documentary. So this is kind of a breaking story for you guys. But behind the scenes, I had figured out a way to control the price of the coin on this underground exchange where I was able to jump the order book, where I would put in a sale. I would take my Centra coins and my Ether, transfer it to this exchange called Ether Delta. If anybody's in the crypto space and was around then, they know what it is. Right. And you were able to, like, typically on an order book, if you want to buy, there's all the listing of how much people are trying to sell their coin for. So if you want to say the coin was $1 and you want to sell it for $2, as soon as the price got to that point, it would fill that order. Right. But on Ether Delta, you could buy the $2 order without buying the $1.99, the $1.98, the $1.97, right? So as soon as you buy a coin, even if you buy one, until the next transaction on any other exchange hits, it shows on this thing called CoinMarketCap, which is what most people use in the crypto space that tracks all the pricing. It shows that Centra coin is up 100%.
Right.
And now it's at $2, right? And then if you just are consistent in there, you can pretty much control the price of what Centra sits at. And you can just consistently just put in big orders from Ether, and you're basically buying the Centra coins back with your own Ether from yourself, and then you're the only money that you lose is just the gas that it costs to do the transactions. And so the fees.
So the ultimate market manipulation. You can just fuel the price, bump the price up, and then other people see that. And I guess if they're all on the networks and on the platforms, everyone's looking at how other coins are operating. That one's going out 100%. What have I missed out? And then it drives.
There's a page that on CoinMarketCap that shows the coins that are up the most percentage. So that's the FOMO page, essentially, right?
Everyone wants to be on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's
but you worked out how to get there, how to get you to drive the price up. So, and then, it's what you call it. It's like kind of perpetual motion. You get 100%, drives more buyers, which get it to 200% or 300% or whatever it might be. So
exactly.
God, I did not know all this. This is, I'm learning a lot. This is,
there's a lot of layers. There's so many layers that I can go on for 20 hours on all the different layers.
So what was your lifestyle like? You're living in this sort of crazy crypto world, but you sort of still living in Miami, still sort of carrying on. What was lifestyle like for you as a kind of crypto king?
So once we had a good amount of money, it was insane, right? Because I had sold only so many of the cars. I had kept a few cars. So I was an Aston Martin guy. I'm sure your fan base will appreciate that.
Good British car, yeah.
Yeah. I love, that's the only car I like. I
Really?
know a lot of people in America, they like the Lambos. Lambos suck. Yeah. They're too small. Ferraris are great cars, but Aston Martins, no one else is driving. So I felt like I was different. And I just love the way the car drives.
Yeah. They're stylish. They're nice cars. Yeah. So you had your Aston?
Yeah. I would drive my Aston and pretty much, in Miami, it's an attention market, right? Like, so like anywhere you go, you pull up, you have your Aston, at this point, I'm walking around with 100,000 in cash everywhere I go. Even when I would just pay for, I was a schmuck, right? Like if I'd pay for my dinner bill, I was pulling out a stack of $10,000 to pay my $300 bill. I was a complete asshole. I'm a young, I'm like 26, 27, right? I was just trying to show off.
Yeah.
And so you're basically getting every girl you could ever have. And then pretty similar to Wolf of Wall Street, you can imagine, with strippers, hookers, drug-fueled parties. That's all in there, right? Pretty much not every day, because I would still wake up every day at 6 a.m. and put my suit on, go to shower, put my suit on, and be in the office. I was the first one in the office.
You went to work after that tells you something, at least after all these all-night parties, you're still showing up and doing the work in the day. Good for you, I suppose.
Yeah, like people think just because of fraud, there was less work. I think we were working almost harder than some people, because you're always trying to cover up the questions, the bad questions from people in chat rooms. So you're always worried about the falling apart part. So you're always have so much anxiety that you're working overtime. But I was always the first guy in the office. That was my thing. I'm still this. I wake up at 5 a.m. every day, still to this day. Now it's a little different. I have kids, so I just try to get up a little bit before them.
You're still waking up at 5 a.m., but your lifestyle's a bit different, I guess, than it was back in Miami. Tell me something about this, because as the whole thing's rolling and you're making money and stuff, I'm interested, because it still applies to this day. The role of, you had some sort of celebrity people endorsing the whole coin. Certainly, famously, it's all, it's public information. You'd Floyd Mayweather. You had DJ Khaled. You had these people who, what's the story there? Do you or somebody approaches them and say, we're going to give you money, can you promote it? Is it as simple as that? Yeah. In Miami, all through connections, we knew their managers, and their managers basically take a cut. Still to this day, I don't know why anybody would listen to Floyd Mayweather, like I said in the documentary, on financial advice. But, people, just the fact that it's shown to whatever amount of millions of followers that he has, and the same thing with Khaled, the amount of followers that he has, that's really what you're looking for, and just to increase the FOMO. But yeah, those two endorsements, as soon as you had the Floyd Mayweather post, every chat room's talking about it, they're posting it, and millions of dollars are coming in within 24 hours. It's crazy, isn't it? But that's the way us human beings operate. We see people that we like or we admire, and they say something's good. So, a lot of people will listen, will believe it, will buy. It wasn't long ago that we had, amongst others, Tom Brady with the whole FTX thing, which is a kind of another different level. And he was marketing that. And there's been so many. There's still a lot right now. We call them finfluencers, and even sort of not super famous people, but there's, on TikTok nowadays, people have got, they've got 100,000 followers, which is enough to make an impact, and they're marketing and they're advertising. And I see some stuff. My kids are teenagers, and they saying to me, Dad, what do you think? Is this thing a good thing? Because I don't know who they are. XYZ are marketing or selling it. And I said, no, it's bullshit. But they quite like it, because whoever it is, they admire the person, whatever else they're doing, an actor or something. So, the role, and this is a kind of a story, and I think also relevant to this podcast as well. Just be careful about, who you take advice from and who you're influenced from and who you're going to, particularly around, as you say, look, Mayweather is a world-class boxer, there's no doubt, but he's not necessarily a deep expert on sort of financial matters, or certainly when it gets into the murky world of crypto and coins and stuff.
Buy his boxing gloves. Buy his boxing gloves.
That could be a good investment. Don't buy what he's been paid $200,000 or whatever it was to endorse. So I think there's definitely if you see those things out there, it's a red flag for any investment. If you see some celebrity endorsing a financial investment, it's probably time to give it a miss. So you kept on doing this. You were pushing it and pushing it. I mean, tell us a story briefly about your colleague. He went off to Korea. I think there was some investors there, which is a whole other crazy story in itself. What happened in Korea?
So at this time, also crypto is on an uptick, right? So the coin, when we first started, $200 in Ether. At this point, it's $1,000 in Ether, right? So all those initial investments are 5x for us, which was amazing, right? So then the Korea deal, some random Asian names came in our chat room, and they were like, "Oh, we have big money," and you're like, everybody says they have big money.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, oh, okay. They're like, come to Korea. We're like, come to Korea, right?
Yeah, right. It just sounds, honestly, I got to, sorry to interrupt you, but when I watched the thing I took away from it, I thought, if someone put forward a script of your story, like to a Hollywood producer or something, they say, this is bullshit, we can't make this, it is so far-fetched, no one's ever going to believe this. And as they say, truth is often stranger than facts are stranger than fiction. And this is true. This is the fact. So you get some random Koreans in your chat room saying, come to Korea, we've got lots of money. So you didn't go.
Yeah, no. So they gave us a business name. You look up the business, nothing.
Right. Yeah.
And we're like, okay. And then they're like, all right, we'll invest $5 million before you come.
Right.
They send it like that. Like, right.
And what? So this comes into your sort of coin account, whatever it's called, your kind of platform account. So they sent it to you.
Yes. In Ether, they sent $5 million worth of Ether.
Right. And just by the way, you can Ether, you can transfer to fiat currency. You can get dollars.
You can transfer it to Coinbase and cash it out same day.
Right. Okay. So it's real money. This is not kind of just magic money. Although they're sending it in Ether, it actually is real money that you can spend. So they send you $5 million worth of Ether. And then what happened?
And then we're like, all right. So, Sam's like, all right, I'm going, right? Yeah. I wasn't going to go there. If they had maybe more details on their website, I would have maybe went, but the fact that they just seemed shady, right? And we're shady.
It's a bit sketchy.
Yeah, it's a sketchy thing. And we don't really have anything to present to them that's going to make it look great, right? So like we had been developing the app at this point, right? We're actually in development trying to go legitimate at this point, but we weren't there yet. We had been reaching out to prepaid companies to get the cards branded. We're almost there. Like we're close.
But just to say that you say you were trying to go legitimate. You were trying to really actually create this card that you could just use as a debit card.
The documentary doesn't show this. The documentary doesn't show this.
It doesn't at all. The documentary says it was a complete fraud all the way, but you're genuinely saying that there was an intention to legitimize it, to create this.
By the time the rest happened, we had a fully legitimate working card with an app that fully worked.
Wow.
Fully worked. We got arrested for how we raised money. We didn't get arrested for what the company was at that point. But they didn't, of course, they're not going to put that in narrative.
Sure.
They have to follow their narrative, which is fine. We did wrong and we got arrested for it. So he goes to Korea.
So what happened with the Korean guys? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he goes to Korea and we had developed like basically a test program of our app so that we can basically make it work for the Koreans. But how it worked was that it was the same thing, a debit card that we had used connected to our wallet. And then basically when he used his debit card, it would show on his bank account and we would just have to press a button and it would automatically transact onto the app that he was going to show in the presentation, which was going to be a film presentation for South Korea. And they're filming it and he's like, all right, I'm going, wait for the transaction. I have his bank account pulled up on my thing, right? I'm waiting for it to just show. And then all I had to do was press one button and an API would connect the two things and it would show on his app in Korea. And he's like, all right, I see the transaction. Boom, press the button. I don't hear for hours, maybe 10 hours.
Right. So that's the last you hear. You press the button and then he doesn't communicate. And you're thinking,
he's dead.
What's happened?
He's dead.
Yeah.
He's dead. For sure dead. Like I was like pit in my stomach. My business partner is dead.
Yeah.
and he's my good business, like he's the smart business partner, right? The other guy is,
Yeah.
I don't think he's that smart, right?
And you know, it wouldn't be that far-fetched at all. The world you're operating in, let's face it, it is, you know, you've just said it already, it's full of criminals and shady characters. He's gone all the way to Korea. Now, that's just a different part of the world. I don't know too much about Korea, but it's definitely, you know, it's different culture from the US. It wouldn't be out of, you know, the bounds of possibility that he's never coming back, right? So you're thinking he's gone at this stage. But
yeah, and that's like, yeah. And then he texts me.
Resurface. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's just like, he just says, yo, you know, and you're like, okay, you know, you don't know if it's him or what's going on.
Yeah.
And he's like, it didn't work. It's literally, it didn't work. And we're like, oh shit, you know, like what happened? Is this him? You know, like trying to call, like just nonstop calling all day. Like just get on the phone with me. Talk to me. I want to hear your voice. Right.
Yeah.
And then he just says, but they're still going to invest. And we're like,
no, that's what I thought of it. What? The whole point of the thing that they wanted to invest in just didn't work. But they said, no, don't worry. We'll invest anyway. And they threw another load of money at you.
Yeah, he was a great talker. And he basically just told them where we were at, because this is where they miss it in the documentary, but we were trying to go legit. And the app was essentially, I wouldn't say fake, but it's a prototype. Like the guy, the developer even corrected in the documentary, if you caught that, he was like, I don't know how you use the word fake. It was a prototype. It was just a prototype that was pretty, what we ended up developing was the same thing that just worked correctly. Yeah, so that then ended up coming back $10 million more, $15 million. And that was our essentially our last investment that we had. We told everybody from day one that we were going to keep a certain amount of Century tokens in our own reserve, and we had sold out. So that was our sellout point.
Oh, so you cleared out then? You sold all your
oversold.
coins?
We actually oversold. We made a deal with them to not tell anybody that we oversold, because they were like, the only way we're going to commit to this extra 10 million is if you give us a bonus on what we originally agreed on, and we'll basically convince the world with you that this is all working and ready to go.
Right. So, but in the background, you're beginning to, the heat's beginning to get turned up. Is that right? You're getting a few more people asking questions. I saw that the journalist, I think New York Times journalist, is asking questions, and a few more people in the chat rooms. So how did that develop? It seemed to me that the kind of the SEC, the regulators, were pretty slow to catch up with what was going on. I mean, let's face it, it's a fast moving, it's a crazy sort of world it live in, and their sort of more traditional regulators are always going to struggle, I think, to understand that. But how did it begin
take their
to...
time.
Yeah,
they take their time on purpose, right? They make sure they're right. They make sure it's not just like they're shooting at the hip and just trying to charge you before they have, they build the case, and they were probably watching, but they're just waiting and seeing what they can prove. And it's just tough things to prove to an extent. The Visa and MasterCard aspect, and the fact that we were applying for real ones. And there were just so many cryptocurrency companies that never were producing anything. So I think they had their hands full in that sense.
Right, but it's at some point. When did you realize that sort of the game was up? That everything was. Yeah.
So throughout the whole time, there's these moments of like a big YouTuber put out a thing, and then we would just pay them off, right? And they would take it down. A lot of times,
really,
right?
It's like that. That's what you do. You just someone who of influence said something negative, send them some money, take it down. Yeah,
and then so many times, a lot of them were like, real into crypto. They would be like, no, we're not taking this one down, right? And a week later, they'd say, my kid's sick, and then send them 20 grand in Bitcoin or in Ethereum or in Centra tokens if we could, and they would take it down. But then the New York Times article came about, and that was a rough one, right? Like Farkas had spoke to him, and then he put me on the phone with him, and I didn't know how vetted he was. At this point, like, I'm busy in the office, right? We're trying to develop a real app, and I'm all day running around speaking to all the developers, and I'm also on drugs, right? So I'm not completely clear-minded, right? So when this guy gets on the phone, oh, New York Times, I'm from New York. I'm like, this is a cool publication. Let's hear what he's got to say. And then right away he's like, oh, I'm sending down he got us, right? Like, he was very smart. He wasn't asking questions at first, all friendly, sends his photographer down. We all put our suits on, take the pictures. And then after it was maybe a month before any article came out. Every week he's calling, asking more questions. Oh, Ray, you hear it in the documentary, the things that he was,
he's intentionally doing this. He's just building up a relationship, a friendship. At that moment, he's still thinking, this is a scam, this is a fraud, but I want to kind of get closer to them. So he's building a relationship with you guys over a period of time. So
yeah,
smart,
he knew what he was doing from day one. He was a great journalist. He did a fantastic job as far as what his job is. He played me to like a fiddle. Yeah.
And then what? There was what is depicted in the documentary as funny you were Aston Martin's there, but the sort of the feds or the cops or whoever it sort of shows up at your place. Was it like that? Did it go down like that? Were you just arrested one day, one morning?
So I had left the company 2 months before. The other co-founders got arrested before me, about a month before me, or 2 months before me, pretty much. And one was trying to go back to Korea to do something. They say he was trying to flee the country. I actually don't believe he was, but he was going down there. I don't know what the hell he was going to do. I had already left the company for this point. At this point, I'm just gambling every day like a maniac.
Right.
But and then 2 months later, after they had got arrested, I almost thought like they weren't going to come get me because I had left the company for a bit there. And I was like, maybe I'm good.
I don't work there anymore. Yeah, it's not my problem. Yeah. But it wasn't quite like that. No, so they did come for you.
Yeah, and I was also at that point, my addiction's at the worst point it was ever. And then one day, I left the casino, got home, I fell asleep, and you just hear the crazy banging on the door that, they bang is FBI just bangs harder than anybody.
Yeah. They want you to know that it's the FBI here and no one else.
Yeah. I thought I was getting robbed. I thought I was maybe getting robbed, but,
you were in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. I had my license gun, like in America, everybody's got a license gun, but, so I grabbed that at first, but then you hear FBI, you put it down and, you just went with my underwear and put my hands behind my back.
And that's it. Enough you go. Was that the lowest point for you of this whole crypto journey? I presume that must be the lowest or close to it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. This is a tough moment, right? I mean, and then like you're in jail and you're withdrawing from drugs. It was rough. And they put you in like a suicide suit because you're coming off of drugs, like in this like weird, looks like a gladiator suit. It's Velcro. It's terrible.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good. It sounds a real contrast to the life you've been living up until that point. It's kind of, I guess that's this whole concept of highs and lows. I mean, for young men in their 20s, for many of them, the life you described just sounds, amazing, fantastic. All the girls, all the parties, all the fun of Miami. And then you've got what is effectively the complete opposite of that. You're locked up, you're in a suicide suit, and life isn't looking too good for you. And as you say, that's your lowest point. So, what happened from there? From there onwards, is it just kind of the traditional route? You're going to go through the whole legal process, and if anyone wants to go into that, I don't think we'll sort of really explore that in too much detail. It's all in documentary. But it was how long did that whole process last?
It lasted very long. So we got arrested in 2018. I got sentenced a year and a half ago.
Oh, really? So is it lasted
a very long time?
Were you locked up during this time?
No, I was never. I got locked up for a week. I got out to go to rehab, and then I was on house arrest for about a year and a half, where I had no internet access, and I just basically did nothing. I had to get it approved to be able to like play video games. I actually ended up going back to college to be able to leave my house and do something.
Right.
And I was driving an Aston Martin to college at like 29.
Something you got some standards. Whatever happens, gonna not drop your standards. Once you got an Aston.
No, I just still had it. They didn't take it yet, so I just still had it.
Incredible. I mean, looking back, I don't know. Maybe it's a stupid question, but maybe it's not. Do you have any regrets?
Yeah, absolutely. My biggest regret is obviously that people lost money. I also regret not just working at Miami Exotics and making it profitable and cutting back expenses. I think if I was off substances, I would have been able to do that. And I wouldn't even thought about venturing into something bigger or trying to make quick money like I looked at the crypto space as.
Do you know, that was a big thought I had when I watched the documentary. I thought, never spoke to you. I just saw you and I thought that guy would be a success. You were a hustler, let's face it, but you were an entrepreneur and you knew how to make money. You know how to make profit. I often think that if you just applied yourself to a legitimate enterprise, I mean, you might not have made quite the same amount of money, who knows, but you'd have done well. And it's often is the case that the sort of skill sets that sometimes people who pursue criminal endeavors, if they apply them to non-criminal, they could be as successful. And I took that from you. And as you say, if you kept with the cars, the Miami Exotics, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Your life would be different. But
also a big point is to pick good business partners that you can trust.
Yeah.
I think if I had done that and we would have had good discourse, I could have worked on my problems, they could have worked on their problems, and we could have made that business super successful and still been the biggest company in Miami.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. Coming through this, like the other side, there's crypto still huge, and there's different parts of crypto. Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin continues to rise. It's kind of joining the mainstream pretty soon. There's you heard a company called BlackRock. BlackRock are about to create like a legitimate version of Bitcoin in the form of an ETF. I understand that's going to get approval any day now. So it becomes kind of the mainstream. More and more people investing, certainly in Bitcoin, maybe not some of the other coins. With all that you've learned and all your knowledge and all your experience, anyone listening to this, what advice would you give anyone who's thinking about getting into crypto to some degree? Would you recommend it, or would you tell them to avoid it?
Now in my old age, I'm pretty traditional. I would like to tell people to just stay with Bitcoin or Ethereum. And then as far as stocks go, in America, it's the S&P 500, which is the 500 biggest companies in America into one thing. And that's the only two things I would invest in, right? Or three things, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, or the S&P 500. I just have no urge to make sure a company is legitimate. I know what I was able to get away with. And because I knew what I was able to get away with, I would never even come close to trusting some guy that I can't prove is fully legitimate.
Yeah. I think that's great advice, definitely. And it's interesting. I've seen you mentioned earlier on the Wolf of Wall Street guy, Jordan Belfort, and all his sort of experiences before. And I saw him. He's got a new book out right now, and he's just talking about the same sort of thing. And guess what he recommends? S&P 500. It's boring, it's dull, but hey, it turns out 10%.
10% is great. Yeah, 10% is great.
Happy days. No, that's a good endorsement. In my day job, when we give advice to high net worths and entrepreneurs and so on, it's pretty much what we say. There's just some stuff that it's kind of the idea of invest in what's always worked, not something that's just working today. There's always a new thing. There's always a new idea. There's always a new investment, NFTs, you name it. And they might work and they might not, but some things have worked for decades or centuries. So, great feedback, great advice. So tell me, you mentioned, your life's different now. What's your life like now? I saw just at the very end of the documentary, you were married and you had a kid. What's your situation right now?
I have two.
Right.
There's one I feel bad that he didn't make the cut. I filmed with him, but they only showed my second one. They only showed my second one because my wife's water broke the day of sentencing.
Yeah, it was good. It was good drama. That was a big day for you. You got sentenced. I'll leave out exactly what happened. If anyone who hasn't seen the documentary, they should watch that for the sentence. What happened? I guess the fact that you and I are speaking right now and you're not locked up might give them a clue as to what might have happened. But yeah, that was a big day for you. Her waters broke. Your child was born, and you got sentenced all on the same day. That's a day you won't forget. You won't forget in a hurry. So what's next?
And it was on film.
You?
And it was on film.
The whole thing was like all right. So that wasn't staged. That was actually live. You had a camera there with you where you're going through that whole. You must have done because you were going for sentencing. So that would have been a.
Yeah. So there's a shot where like I came out of the courthouse and I hugged my lawyer and my grandma's smoking. Yeah, that's a real scene. We also recreated it at a different courthouse after the fact. Right. To make it just the walking up to the court. I didn't let them film me walking into the court because I didn't want them to see cameras and stuff. I'd make them drop me off like 5 blocks. But there's the scene where I'm getting ready, driving to the courthouse. My friend actually was the one that filmed the part where like I'm kissing my wife before she goes into the hospital. So that
Yeah.
part, most of it is all real. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. What a story. So, in your new kind of domestic life and with your wife and your kids, the big question is, what's next? Where are you going from here, Ray?
So I have a pretty much finished book that I've been trying to get published. That's like my ultimate goal with the documentary coming out, is to get this book published. It's publishers are a bit weird with dealing with criminals, but I think once they notice now that they can make money because the documentary is doing so well, now they'll probably be interested. Fair enough, right? They're like, this is they didn't know that was coming out. I would try to tell them, but who am I to believe? Who's going to believe?
Well, sure,
me, right?
But it's true now. It's out. It's popular. There's definitely an audience, as you say. Publishers are business people as well. They like to make money. They like to make profits. So if any publisher is listening or watching this right now, get in touch with you, right? If they're ready to.
Yeah, I might self-publish it, but I'd rather use a publisher, a big publisher, and have them edit it really well, right? That's my biggest dilemma. Also, editors, if it's a good editor that just wants to help me self-publish it, I'm all for that as well. Sure. And then I also have a podcast, a iHeartRadio podcast that's coming out. Okay. And then I plan on doing, so that's already almost finished. That's the same story. And then after the fact, I'm going to get a studio and pretty much do like a in-person with one of my friends, like a regular standard podcast, like a lot of people, I think my younger fan base would enjoy.
Great. That sounds good. So everyone sort of look out for that. I mean, I followed you on Twitter, X as it's called now. People can check you out there. And are you across the other social media platforms? It doesn't take much to find you. People can find you quite easily, right? Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram is at Ray Trapani, my regular name, RayTrapani, and that's pretty much where I'm pretty good with engaging with fans and whatnot. Yeah. After you guys see the documentary, if you want to ask me any questions, I pretty much answer most questions that I'm asked on Twitter.
Well, that's the truth. Look, you and I are speaking now because I sent you a DM on Twitter. You replied straight away, and here we are now. So you're definitely very approachable for a Netflix movie star. So that's good. Look, we're just kind of heading towards the end of our conversation. I really appreciate the time with you, but let me ask you just a couple of more questions as we wrap up. Who's inspired you? Are there any other books or podcasts or movies or anything that have inspired you along your journey that other people might want to be interested in?
I don't want to give criminal movies too much endorsement, but I mean, Catch Me If You Can was my favorite movie as a kid, and really? Then Wolf of Wall Street actually came out right before Central Tech started.
That was an inspiration. Jordan Belfort would be happy to hear.
Yeah, so yeah,
you'd make a good double act. Yeah, you'd make a great double act when you do your sort of live gigs. Who knows? All right, so that was influential. Again, that's interesting. Those movies, yeah, it's criminal stuff. It's interesting though to see behind the scenes of what goes on. And again,
they're great movies too.
They're great movies. They're and I'm old enough to remember original ones, kind of Wall Street with Michael Douglas, and that was supposed to sort of frighten people off about being investment bankers, and it became the biggest recruitment movie because people just liked the idea of making money and hustling and that sort of thing. So look, in no way are you and I endorsing any of these things. We think it's interesting, exactly. and we can all learn from these things. And if we're learning to avoid certain things, or we're learning to kind of share with other people, your experiences, my experiences, other people that I know, then it's all for the good. It's all for the benefit, I guess, of all of us. So I just want to make that clear. So with that in mind, I've got one last question. It's a question I do ask pretty much everyone, because everyone's got a different definition. Your journey is so, crazy and extraordinary, and you've had, some of the high highs and the low lows, and money in all its different formats has played, a pretty big part in your lifestyle and your life for the last however many years. But when I talk about wealth, the concept of wealth, and what I mean true wealth, what's your definition? What's your personal definition of true wealth?
So my personal definition of true wealth is having a life that's filled with fulfillment and health. Those are two things that I have right now in my life. I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I exercise pretty much, 5 days a week. And I also have a beautiful family, a wife and I you know, my kids fulfill me every single day. As hard as fatherhood is, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then I just being able to just, I have nowhere near the money that I had at that point, but being able to pay my bills and, you know, support my family. And we, you know, we still have a good life. We have a nice house. We have, you know, we drive nice enough cars, and just that alone is my definition of wealth. It's the most important thing, is just being able to just smile and be happy, and just be essentially proud of who you are at that time, right? All the money I had, I was trying to spend it as fast as it came, just because I knew it was never going to stay. And being able to put your money in the bank and know it's going to stay there and build over time is a beautiful thing.
Wise words. Thank you so much, Ray. That's really insightful, and actually, you know, quite inspiring, really. Having been through the journey, you're still a young man, but you've been through a hell of a journey. And to come out the other side and to be in a situation you are in now, you know, with your wife, with your kids, with your, you know, it seems to me like, you know, you found yourself, you found where you kind of were searching for. And when you spoke at the very beginning of that kind of young boy and some of the challenges you went through as a young kid and then a teenage kid, you've got where you needed to be. I think I'm no psychologist, but it sounds like you feel, you know, you are now experienced true wealth. You're fit and healthy. You've got a good family around you, which is at the end of the day is, I guess, what we all want to have. So thanks for sharing that with us, Ray. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your time. Wish you all the best. Congratulations with the success. It's just an extraordinary movie. Everyone should go and see it. For good or bad, people can judge. People can criticize you if they want. People can praise you if they want. But one thing about the movie is it's honest. It's ruthlessly honest. You tell the truth from day one. And it's well worth seeing. So once again, from over here in London, UK, thank you so much for your time. Nice to see you, Ray.
Thank you so much.